All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. And before that, can we launch the poll? I just wanted to understand the audience a little bit. How many of you are a tester, and how many of you are already familiar with Autopilot?
Of course. So the poll is launched. There are two questions here. Super fast. Answers already are coming in. Do you have experience as an automation tester? And are you familiar with UiPath Autopilot for testers? So we'll give it 1 minute, maybe even less.
Yeah.
People are very fast.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, good. So pretty balanced responses in terms of experience.
Yeah.
And an
All
opportunity
right.
to find out about Autopilot. Thank you. Enjoy the session.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering the poll. And let me start by presenting my screen. Just a second. All right, just a quick intro again. I'm Madhurima and I'm part of the product management team for Test Suite. Specifically, I handle few parts of Test Manager and am now also handling the autopilot and agentic testing for Test Manager. And before we move ahead, this is a safe harbor slide. So I'll be showing a couple of things which are still under works and a little bit of a view on the roadmap that we have specifically for autopilot for testers. So this is all subject to change, and these are some forward-looking statements that I am going to make today in this presentation. So, all right. So, what do I have for today, and what am I going to talk about? So, for today's talk, I'll be zooming into one specific aspect of Test Suite, and it is centered around agentic continuous testing. So, what are we aiming to do over here, right? So, we are not going to replace testers or the human thought process here. We want to make the life of testers easier, more productive, and a lot more fun. And this is all going to happen with our autopilot for testers. So this offering is still what we refer to as autopilot, and this is not a specific tool or a specific service. So we provide as part of Test Suite, but it's more of a collection or sets of AI-powered agents that you can say, and that are designed to boost the productivity of testers from start to finish, literally for the entire testing lifecycle. And this colorful set of agents currently look like this. So we have divided these agents into three main pillars: test design, test automation, and test management. So in test design, as the name mentions, Autopilot helps with everything related to design by checking the quality of the requirement and making sure that you get top notch requirement quality, and they should also provide a good coverage. So when I say Autopilot should provide a good coverage, that means you can generate test cases from your requirements. And this is not only for your application testing, but also you can do that for your SAP applications while doing SAP testing. So that is what currently consists in design phase or the test design. And for all things related to test automation, Autopilot will help you to convert these manual tests that you just generated to automated test cases. And strictly speaking, it helps you to convert any type of text into automation, both as a coded automation or a low code UI or API automation. Autopilot also helps to generate synthetic test data to data drive your automated test cases. So this means like if you have already created a test case and you want to provide it with a bunch of different data variations, this is where exactly Autopilot can help you in generating those data variations. And it then also assists you in performing fuzzy verifications, also refactor your coded automations, or to generate expressions, like for example, regular expression. And all these stuff is happening within Studio, right? So when you talk about test automation, the the tool that you need to work is with UiPath Studio. And the next phase, that is the test management pillar. So for all things related to test management and test reporting, Autopilot empowers you to get real-time insights into your test results and helping you figure out why your tests are failing and what is the main or the common error that you have across your entire tests. Apart from that, Autopilot also now allows you to import manual test cases from files. So if you have Excel files literally in any format, you can just upload them into Test Manager and it would convert them into your manual tests. And we are also recently launched the search, Autopilot search, which can search across your entire project and you can ask anything across um, your entire project in test manager, and all in natural language. You do not need to know a specific format in which you want to search for a specific component. You can just type naturally on how you do it in Google and it would get you the details and the results across all artifacts from test manager. And you know what, so these are all different agents we have added until now, and we keep adding and adding more and more agentic capabilities in the near future. So this is what we are planning to do and we are planning to deliver. So some of them are, for example, identifying obsolete tests, right? So this again comes into the design phase because you're generating and designing those tests. So if you're making changes to your requirement, you will have the ability to see if there are any updates required for the existing tests, if you have any missing tests, so that you can create them, or you can also delete the ones that are still not in use or it's no longer relevant for that requirement. And under the test automation, we are also planning to have compare PDF files and user interfaces as part of as an agent that would help you with that. And of course, self-healing test robots, like who doesn't want that, right? And under the test management pillar, we would have something called as digests, which we would be launching soon within test manager, where you will be able to view and schedule different type of digests, which no longer only focuses on results but anything across your project. And we're also going to launch performance testing and an agent which can help you plan, build, and analyze these load test scenarios. Right. So these are all something that is in pipeline, and you can play around with this in the next couple of months. So what am I going to do today? So I'll be taking you through a couple of different agents
Generate
that
test for SAP transactions.
yes, you can generate the tests for SAP transactions. Yeah. So for now, I'll be showing you these couple of agents that we have on the screen, and I'll be taking you through each and everything on one of them live as a demo for you. So let's get started. For this, I'll be first focusing on the test design, and let me just quickly open up my test manager. So here we go. So this is our test manager, and I have a couple of projects. Today I'll be working on this particular project, which is specifically for web application testing, and I already have a bunch of requirement. So first and foremost, what I would like to do is do a evaluation of my requirement. So one of the things that we can see here is go into this particular requirement which says upload loan papers. I think a lot of you are already familiar with UI bank application. So that is a portal which is like a regular banking portal which provides you loan. So this is a dummy one, right? It's not an actual bank. So we have created this for demo purposes, and you can apply for loans and have some loan papers uploaded to that. So this specific requirement is exactly for that. I want to upload my loan documents so that the loan process takes lesser time and I have everything in place. And if you look at a higher level, you see that there are acceptance criteria defined within the requirements and whatnot. But if you look carefully here, especially inside the acceptance criteria, you see there's some discrepancies. So for example, here you have a file size limit which says it accepts files under 5 MB, and if it's something more than that, you get error notification for larger files. But whereas if you see in the automatic rejection bullet, it says that reject files over 3 MB, right? So this is again some discrepancy and some issues within the requirement itself, and you want to make sure that everything is corrected. So without looking at it, if you want autopilot to do that work of analysis and want to make sure everything is in place and provide some enhancement suggestions, you have a button right on top here to evaluate the quality of that specific requirement. So let's click that now. So once you do this, Autopilot for testers will then ask you to upload any other document for context so that it can generate better enhancements or suggestions for that specific requirement. I can, select some PDFs, some texts, text files, or an Excel file. I can also give a image file or JPEGs if you have more of a visual representation of your requirement to provide more context to Autopilot. So let's select these documents. And when you go to the next screen, it will ask you to also guide it to consider while evaluating the requirement. So here is where you can give prompts to the autopilot. So you can either select the out of the box prompts here, like so we have some prompts for every artifact. So here you can see we have requirements, test cases, test sets, and so on. So we also have something called as prompt library, which already has a bunch of predefined and out of the box prompts that you can directly use. Or you can also give your own prompt. So for example, give me everything that for as many scenarios as you want, right? From or evaluate the requirement from a security perspective or from a performance perspective and so on. And once you have added your prompt, you can go ahead and click on evaluate quality. So the autopilot will be busy evaluating the requirement and for a minute or so, and then you get all the enhancement suggestions that it provides for this specific requirement. So here when you look at the suggestions, so as I like pointed out that there are some discrepancies. So one of them was exactly about the file size limits, right? So it says, okay, this is an enhancement that you have to make, and to it also provides a justification of why does it think as a suggestions or why does it thinks as an enhancement. So here it exactly mentions that you have two different criterias and there is a contradiction in the file size. So make clarify this and make sure you have consistency in the file size limits. And you would have a business analyst, working on these requirements, and that would be a task to them. So you can either like do your modifications, or you can also directly add to the requirement and make sure that that person goes ahead and um, modifies the requirement according to the different suggestions that autopilot gives. So once you're here, you can always go back into the suggestions that autopilot provides, and you see that as soon as I added it, this is in work. And if you have done all the changes, you can always um, mark it as done. So this also gives you a tracker kind of a thing where you can track all the suggestions that it has provided and which you have considered or if it's in work, and you can always mark it as done. And of course, you'll never be 100% satisfied with what this generates, and you'd also always want to regenerate it, right? Or so you have this option right here. So again, this would take you back to that specific page where you can add in your different files and modify your prompts and regenerate your enhancement suggestions. And if you're not if you're satisfied with this but also want the autopilot to suggest more, you always have that capability as well. So this is an example of how autopilot boosts the quality of your requirements. So this was one way. So the next thing is, how do you generate tests out of these requirements? So I have another requirement which is like written properly. I've evaluated it and everything like that. So in order to generate the tests, autopilot helps you by doing just that. So again, you have an option of generating the tests here. Again, you give the additional context, like what is your file, if you have any document and such which gives you more insights on how the tests should be and so on. Actually add a prompt, and here you see you have different levels of prompt here specific for testing and generating the test. So I'll say okay, validate end-to-end scenario, and generate tests for it. Again, autopilot is working over here, and it will take a minute for it to generate tests specific to this particular requirement. And what's more, now you can also generate tests with pre and post conditions, so that apart from the manual steps, you will also tell the testers, okay, what should be the preconditions before you perform the tests. And here we go. Autopilot for testers has generated the test, and again, you have the name of the test. And when you expand it, you see all the different steps that needs to be done for this particular test case, right? And again, you have the option of regenerating it, so that it takes you back to the files and additional prompts if you want to provide. And if you're happy with the test that it has suggested, you can select them and create the test directly. So it will create the tests in the background and also link those tests to this particular requirement. So I am now sure that this requirement is covered by multiple different test cases. And if you want to do or generate tests again, you can always do that, right? So there is no end to this. So let's say probably I have done this for an end-to-end scenario. Next, I want to do it from a performance perspective, or for a smoke test and something like that. So you can always keep generating tests. So this is always open for you. So now that I've generated the tests as well, and I would like to automate them. So that would be my next step. So let me quickly go to my studio. So because that is where all the automation happens. Just a second. I'm opening up my studio. Here we go. And this is where you leverage autopilot again. So when you connect to your studio, you also need to connect to your test manager instance. So how do you do that? So here on top, we have a test manager icon where you can define the link of the test manager and also choose which project you're going to work on, and you can connect to it. Once you do that, you get uh, all the tests that you have. So here we have past tests, failed tests, and also which already has automation linked. But you can also filter out easily to just focus on the manual test cases which haven't been automated yet. So this is like your to-do list to automate tests, and especially for the test automation engineers which who are like waiting for them to be automated, right? And there are various ways to do that. So one of the option is, for example, let's take this one, is to right click. And if you are a full on coder and a developer and you like to work with an ID by directly coding into C sharp, we also cater to that. So we have different we cater to different types of personas as well. People who do not have too much knowledge of tests can directly write a low code test case, and if you are a hardcore developer, then you can always go for a coded test case. So in this scenario, I'll choose the coded test case option. So you can see we have the autopilot symbol as well. You can directly generate the coded test case with autopilot. So I'll explain you in a minute on what actually it does and how do we generate the code for a manual test. So manual tests always have a bunch of test steps, right? So like how we just saw, when we had the autopilot generate the tests, it also generates a bunch of manual steps. So what it exactly does is it consumes this bunch of text on the screen along with the object repository elements. So I have an application with multiple buttons, with multiple text boxes and multiple screens. So I already defined that inside my object repository. So with this particular pile of text and all the elements on the screen, it consumes that, connects with the driver framework, and builds a code accordingly to it. So I have not done anything here. So this is a brand new test case, and you can see exactly all the code that it has added for me to make this work. And this happens in a very perfect world and in an ideal scenario. So let's also try to run this and see if it really works or not. So let's go ahead, and it opens up the UI bank portal and goes ahead and applies for a loan. So I have not added any code. So this is directly from a manual test case, right? So this is how seamlessly it works. And not only autopilot generates coded automation, but it can also generate a low code automation. So in 24.10, we released this capability of creating a low code test case for UI and API automation. So again, let's take another test case as an example. Let's say submit a high volume loan request. So in this case, I'll be just doing generate test case with autopilot, and it will generate a low code file in which you can drag and drop activities um, from the activities panel, and this is doing that for you again in context of all the object repository elements and all the text that you have on the screen. It consumes that and prepares a low code automation. So this is how it looks like. So you have all the relevant URLs, all the relevant mouse clicks added, all the type intos and so on. And finally, it also, verifies whether this is um, correct or not, like as every test case should. So this is one of the other feature that we have. So another use case that I would like to show you is on generating the test data. So I told you that we can also create or add test data to test cases. So we can leverage autopilot to do that as well. So for that example, let me go to this file. So here I have a bunch of different arguments, especially in arguments like country, city, name, IBAN, which is international bank account number. So I want autopilot to generate a meaningful set of data for all these arguments. So how do you do that? So I simply right click on the test case and say add test data. Some of you would have been familiar with this as well. So we have multiple sources from where you can add test data to a test case. You have data service, you have files, you can add it from an Excel file, you can auto generate it, and now we also have generate with autopilot. So once I do that, let's see a difference with prompt and without prompt on how and like how meaningful the data is. So let's go ahead and do first without prompt. So it just analyzes all the different arguments within this particular test case and just loads a bunch of data. It takes again hardly a minute and it would display it on the screen. So in this, you see everything is like Germany, Germany, Berlin, and like a single name with different types of variations. Like this is blank in this scenario, two of the other inputs are blank in this scenario, and so on, right? But this doesn't make any sense to me. It's not a meaningful one. But now if I add a prompt to this and regenerate the data, so let's say my prompt is something like this, like generate a table listing 10 countries in the European Union. Like each country should include the name of the country, a city in that specific country, a name of a person that is specific to that country, and a bank account number, which is again specific to that country. So this shows, how powerful the prompt is. So you can mold your data in a way that you would really like to see on the way you're designing your prompts. So in a second, you'll be able to see that the data is much more meaningful this time. Again, you can now see it has given me 10 different, more than 10 different countries in the Europe region, like France, Paris, and then this name is also something that belongs or is of a French person, right? So this is how exactly, you can leverage the power of prompts while using the autopilot features. All right. So let's take a look into something else. Like, for example, if you're not familiar with something, or whenever I say a verification activity, and if you're new to testing or creating workflows from Studio, or new to the Studio tool itself, you also have something called as autopilot documentation search, which would help you to basically figure out things, and that will help you in your automation journey. For example, it will, let's say I want to know all the list of verification activities that I have for application testing, because I'm new to Studio and I do not know much about it. So it will exactly get you all those things from the documentation that we already have, that is docs.uipath.com. And instead of you going there searching for it, it makes your life easier, and gives answer directly over here in this specific panel. So now I know exactly what activity to search for and what it actually does. And then based on the answer that it provides me, I can use that specific activity and configure it. Similarly, you can do much more stuff over here. If you have any workflows issue, you can review the workflows issues and so on. So this was again one of the use case and where you can leverage autopilot to know stuff within Studio itself, and how do you want to implement it within your test cases. All right, so all we spoke about was UI automation for now. And the next use case I want to show is all centered around converting text to code, right? And not for UI automation, but for API automation. So let's take this example where I have a bunch of text. So this says that, okay, get the current temperature for Romania, use this particular API, and you have this API key. By the way, you can use it too. It's a free tool, and then output the temperature in Celsius. So I can select everything, parts of code, and then I would say, okay, autopilot, generate code for me, right? So it will exactly do the thing that I said in the beginning, but in this time, it does not even leverage object repository because it's an API call. So it gives you the entire code here, and let's go ahead and run this again to show you how API automation also works. And we get the results here. So the current temperature is around 5 to 6 degrees. So yeah, this is how you can easily do API automation with the right bunch of prompt, and also using autopilot generate um, capabilities for your coded test case. Next, next thing I wanted to show you is generating expressions, which is very important, right? So in my career of more than 10 years, I still find it very difficult to write a regular expression. And this exactly would help me do that. So, for example, I want to generate a regular expression to check if one of my string variable ends with either a yes or no. So, I directly give that as an example and ask the autopilot to generate a prompt for me, and or a regular expression for me, and it does that. So how great is that, right? So you no longer have to remember how to write a regular expression, but the autopilot is there for you to assist you in writing these type of expressions. And yeah, and the last thing I wanted to show you in Studio is about fuzzy verifications. So we are all used to um, binary or boolean expressions, like things that are yes or no, 0 or 1, true or false, for example. But in the era of AI, when most of these applications are also infused with a lot of gen AI, the things you get gets more trickier and trickier, right? And we need to have more powerful verification, and here is where autopilot helps you too. So, in one of our customers a couple of months ago made us aware of this, that we also wanted to have verifications which are not only true or false, but also kind of understand the sentiment and understands the tone of the message, right? For example, now imagine that you're fetching an error message from your software application, and this is how it looks like your payment didn't go through because your card details are wrong. What were you thinking? So this is a very weird error message, and someone might also get very offended by that. And previously, what we used to do is we used to exactly verify this specific error message and say, okay, this passed or not. But my point here is now we do not want to verify that, right? What the exact error message is. But we want to verify the tone of the message. And how do I do that? So for that, I leverage the Gen AI activities, which is for content generation. And uh, we basically also select the models. We support all different sorts of models right now. And I selected GPT-4 here right now. And I give a prompt saying that, okay, I see verify this message and check if this message is clear and understandable, and make sure that this is professional and avoid any casual language, and make sure that it is in a constructive tone, and so on and so forth, right? Because now AI can be anywhere in the third party application too. So we want to also make sure and verify that whatever the AI generates in the third party application also is in a good way and not in a bad perspective or a bad tone. And once I check all that, I also tell my autopilot that, okay, once you do that, give me result in this particular format. If it fails, why did it fail and what is the reason it failed, and avoid any other formatting and so on. So once I do that, let's see how the autopilot responds here. It's the same old message, which is a very hurtful message when the payment doesn't go through. And now I'll get an output from the autopilot. So this says that, okay, verification of course failed. This is also what we expected. So this is the message. This message is casual and could be perceived as rude or sarcastic. And additionally, this message focuses on highlighting the problem without any offering any constructive solution or next step, which is true. So now I would have to take a look at this application and how it was designed, and where the other AI infused um, thing is going wrong, and I have to figure that out as an application tester, right? So this is another use case that is pretty new to all of us, because now we are finding Gen AI everywhere in in any application. And another use case for this is like to find anomalies in the data tables. So instead of just having is this data table correct or not, you can now find anomalies like is there any repetitive columns, or is there something weird with the column, or you should not have that, or any recommendations if I'm missing anything in that data table or something like that, right? So these are all the stuff that you have in the test automation part that is within the studio. And now I would like to do a quick recap of what we have done until now. So let me go back to my presentation, just a minute. Okay, here we go. So until now, we have seen the quality check of requirements, generated tests, generated coded automation, generated a low code automation, performed fuzzy verifications, searched in the portal, docs portal, created a API automation, generated synthetic data, and generated expressions. And the last thing that I wanted to do is in the test management pillar. And this is where there are something currently under works, which I also want to show you, because that are a couple of exciting features within the tool. And but I would first like to show you the generate test insight reports. So again, I'll go back to my test manager. So let's assume that whatever test cases I create using Studio, I go ahead and combine them as test sets, and also do a regular execution of them in an automated way, of course. And once you do that, you will find all your results here in the execution panel. And then now, this in the background would have thousands and thousands of test case logs. And in order to drill down into what exactly is failing, and you want to get more insights on all of your test results, you can select these test cases execution logs and generate insights. You can also do it from the selection by manually selecting them, Or you can also say, okay, hey autopilot, generate insight for everything that happened for the last 15 days or for the last 30 days, right? And this will analyze all the logs that we have and generate a report for that. So now let's go ahead and select a couple of them and generate insights from selection. And this will again take a couple of minutes to do that because sometimes the files are pretty heavy. But I've already created an insight report for you, and see, let's see how it looks like. So this is an example of how gen- insights are generated, right? So it gives you an overview of all the failure across the test executions, and then it tells you like what are the high severity items, what are the medium severity items. It will list all the top failing tests for you, and then it will show what are the common errors you find in these particular tests, and what are some of the error patterns that you have. And finally, apart from all of this, it will also give you recommendation on how you can reduce this error, so that you can improve your test quality and also make sure you're covering um, have a good coverage across the application. So let's go into one of them. For example, I go into this common error. It will exactly pinpoint me like what are the logs that has this particular common error, which is the delayed appearance of success message, and then I can drill down into it, right? And I can always go back and dive into something else like top failing tests or error patterns and so on. So, what this report exactly does is these are super focused on test case logs and test case results. So, the only goal of this report is to tell you why your test cases are failing. So, now I wanted to show something which, again, as I said, it's currently being worked upon. And this is um, a report that gives you the information of your entire test project. So here I am in my test manager dashboard, and we would have something new called as digests. So once I click this, this will give you a bunch of reports where you can schedule your digest customized for you. So you can like have everything, right? You can tell, okay, give me all the tests that are not being used, give me tests which are obsolete, so that you can make further decisions on them, whether you want to delete them, whether you want to archive them, or give me something that is assigned to me, and so on. So let's dive into one of the digest. So this is an example of how it might look like. So here we have a lot of other things like stability concerns with tests with highest failure, like potential redundancies, which has similar and identical steps, like potential gaps where we have requirements, we have a bunch of updates to that, but there are no linked test cases or there are some missing test cases. Then you have, maintenance concerned, like these are the tests with most frequent changes in the month, and so on. And you can create it with your own prompt. So let's take a look at this. And these are all the bunch of test cases um, which have these failures for that specific month. And you can always go ahead and edit this digest, right? You can always go ahead and um, customize your prompt or use your out of the box prompt and schedule them. So this will all keep on coming. So if you want to have a daily digest, it will keep getting added. So the first thing that you come to test manager, you can have a look of for how things are going on. Are they going well? Is there something I need to be concerned about? Is there any new thing that are failing? Or you can also have a weekly or a monthly one, so that you can also send them out directly to your leaders. And another cool thing that I wanted to talk about is the search with autopilot functionality. So once I click on this, it will you can do search anything across the entire project. So if you're not sure where to start, here, these are some of the examples that you can use using this particular search option. So you can find the requirements that are linked to you. You can find the automated tests which are always failing and like probably which has some defect linked to it, or you can also find the automated tests that took a longer time to execute and so on. So again, one of the example that I would like to show you is find all automated tests linked to this particular test set and which failed in 30 days, but they do not have any defects. So this is kind of an action item that I need to do, and this gets, you know, super focused when I use this chat functionality. And I'll go ahead and, click on search. It would take me a couple of seconds so that the autopilot goes through everything, all the artifacts, and generates the results. And exactly you'll get these test cases which are of that specific criteria. And then you also have an option to perform bulk operations from here on. You want to edit labels or you want to export them to have a better look at it and so on, and also the task level details for each test. Now, another example is, um, uh, let's say I want to find requirements and test cases, not only one artifact, but multiple artifacts which are labeled with a particular tag and are assigned to me so that I can take relevant action. And then you just search. Again, it will take a couple of seconds for it to work and get those details. But at the end of the day, you will have exactly that, right? You would have two tables, one for requirements and one for test cases, and then you can decide what you want to do. So these are a bunch of features that I showed you, and that is typically autopilot for testers. And let me go back to the screen again. So these are the things that you saw, and there are few things that I didn't, but you can play around with them. They are already available, especially the ones in 24.10, and we would have few more which would be available in 25.4 or in a couple of months. So if you have any queries or if you want to know more about the other agents we are developing, like feel free to contact me. And you can always check out the Autopilot spot where we have videos, guides, tutorials, and everything about testing with Autopilot. And this is available for everybody. So this is how it looks like. Just a second, it keeps opening. Yeah. So you have um, videos, you have featured papers, you also have short clips for each and every agent that we have right now. So somebody asked me if we can create tests for SAP transaction. Yes, you can. And here's a small video on it if you would like to know like how we do that, right? And yeah, so this was all about autopilot for testers, and like we can open the forum for any other questions. And let me check the chat window as well. Okay, so the first question we saw is we I see is what is the difference between a code generated, a low code or a coded automation. So low code automations are nothing but you have a drag and drop functionality. So you have activities panel in which you have a bunch of activities. So this IDE is both for testing as well as RPA, and you have multiple different activities which you can um, drag and drop, and you do not need a specific coding skill um, to utilize that and create your test cases. So that is called as low code. Whereas when you look at coded test cases or coded automations, those are something that you can directly code into. For example, this standard request that we saw. So you need to literally do a coding in C sharp, because we know we have a variety of people, like people who know coding, who don't know coding, who are transitioning from manual testing to automation. So probably they can go ahead and start with low code automation and then move into, full time or full fledged coded automations. So here you can leverage create by creating code source files. You can do anything that you do on a C sharp type of file. Okay, can we notify the BA about the changes. I think you are referring to when you are adding enhancements from the autopilot. Right now, not on requirements, but you have assignees on the test cases, but we are also going to expand it to different other artifacts. Yes, that's there in the roadmap. So once you have those assigned to somebody, then of course they would be notified. Okay, there's another question. Changes to the requirements here will lead to divergence from the design. How does UiPath close this gap? So the autopilot is just suggesting the enhancements, right? And according to the design documents that you might have in your company. So we are not um, actually moving out of it, but it gives you better suggestions. And if there are any gaps, it would try to close them and make sure that the requirement is as accurate as possible. So we're not um, diverging to something else over here. And what's next? Can we generate test cases for a given set of user stories in offline mode without doing this at every user story level? No, you cannot do this in offline mode right now because we leverage LLM models, and you can basically, you do not need to wait for them to generate test cases. You'll definitely be notified. So you can keep generating this for every user story. And once that generation is completed, you'll always be notified. Or you can go back to that specific screen or by using the recent activity. So when I'm in this requirement, let's say this one. So I do not have to wait for the autopilot to generate the test. I can come out of this tab and work on something else meanwhile. And I always have this latest results where I can see the bunch of, test cases the autopilot has suggested me. So which programming languages are supported in case of coded tests? It's C sharp. Once the tests are generated using autopilot, is it visible in Jira if it is integrated to test manager? Yes. If you have already done the integration, so we do have additional a third party tool called as TaskTop, with which you can perform integration to various ALM tools like Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, and so on. So if you have made that connection and that integration, and you have X-ray installed, then the tests would be visible there as well. And then how is it is different from step definitions in Cucumber? Like, what do you exactly mean? Okay, I'll go to the next question. So how do you generate object repository elements manually, or you have to add in? Uh, so object repository elements can be added by going to the screen and recording. So you just go ahead and do a screen recording basically of the entire application. It will automatically capture the elements, but you would have to guide it through like what you want to click, what you want to type, and so on. In future, we also have this in roadmap that you would not need to do this kind of an addition of elements in the screen, but we would do it for you. But yeah, this is in roadmap right now, and probably soon it will get implemented. Okay, code does not look organized. Is a framework following any design pattern? What are the prerequisites for? Okay, so when you say the code is not organized, so this is basically the manual steps that we get from a manual test, right? And based on this, the code is generated so that it's also easy for reading. Okay, this particular step is basically doing the other way of doing or writing code for this is this, and so on. And if you do not want to leverage autopilot, and let's say for this short term request, I do not want to leverage autopilot, I can also create a coded test case. So in that situation, you just get the bunch of manual steps directly into your code, and then you can uh, organize it however you want. And even in this scenario, you can do your own organization after the autopilot generates the code for you. And like, what are the prerequisites for creating automated tests? You should have Studio, and you should have a bunch of manual tests with steps, or you can directly go ahead and create a coded test case from scratch as well. So there is no uh, prerequisites. But for capturing the XPaths, as I said, if you're referring to the elements, the object repository is important right now, which you can capture using this particular method, that is capture elements, and go across the screens of your application. Okay, so can we generate test data from XML? Right now, you cannot. You can do it from a JSON file, and XML, I think it is again planned in the roadmap for now, and modify to generate unique data for every execution at runtime. So it depends on the data that you would have in that file. So if you make sure that is unique, every time it picks up, it would be a new record that you would have configured. So yeah, that is there. And we are also going to introduce a data driven concept within test manager itself, so that you can manage your data there, and there you would have that unique concept where you can define a specific column that you would like to have as a key column, I would say, and then you would have unique rows according to that. Okay, the next question is data generated persistent across multiple executions? And does it generate data based on DB table field relations? I don't understand this question. Probably you can provide more clarity on that.
So the question is, you have given example that it is generating data, right? So
Mm-hmm.
does data remain same with each execution?
Yes. So now when you generate the data over here, and if you apply it to that test case, it would remain same, but then you have various different sources that you can also configure to. But the
Okay.
idea of a data driven test case is that you would have all the different variations that would happen in the test case, and you would not really like to change it. But if you want to have additional data rows added, then probably the best category would be to link it to a data service instead.
And next question is, does it maintain referential integrity? Or is it just in UI, whatever field is available, I'm generating the data and then forgetting about it? So for example, you showed an example of bank account ID, right?
Hmm.
So will I have same bank account ID available on some other screen?
No, but this is just the data that we are generating
Yeah, yeah,
based on the
yeah,
arguments.
yeah.
So right now
But
we are not. Yeah, go ahead.
in the flow, let's say I'm creating an account, right? I'm opening an account
Hmm.
with some name and other stuff. Let's say
Hmm.
address. Then the same address can be used at some other functionality. Let's say
Yeah.
send letter and all. So are we
Yes.
maintaining that referential integrity? Or
So
it
that
just
is,
that some sample random data we are generating and using it?
yeah, we are generating and using the same some sample data, but that
Okay.
data can be used across your test cases if you want to have that specific flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a provision where I can define a common data set
Yes,
and
you
use it
can.
across my, let's say,
Exactly.
entire test suite.
Yeah. So as
Okay.
I said, you have Excel files that you can use. You can also use a data service. So data service is, I can actually show it to you, is another service that we provide. Just a second. Yeah, here we go. This is like a database for us, right, within automation cloud, where you can configure multiple tables with multiple different data set. So you can directly link your test cases to this particular data set, so that you do not have to keep changing them. So for example, let's say here I have branch, city, country, and so on, and this is some of the data which is there within that data set. So I can always link my test cases to this particular data set in order to have a consistent database and a consistent set of values that I'm providing across all test cases. All right. Okay, can we configure or use a different LLM based on client needs instead of OpenAI? It's a very, yeah, good question. So here we do have this operation available in AI trust layer. So it would be in the admin section. So let me find one of the portal that I have access to, the admin tab. Just a minute. Yeah, but we do have an option of doing that. You can basically create policies uh, where you can tell, okay, this is exactly what um, LLM model I want for me to run. And let's say you do not like OpenAI, you can also go for Anthropic models or something like that. I think it's not yet implemented, but I think you'll get that soon within a couple of days in your cloud environments. But yeah, that is possible. Regarding API, can you show JSON output validation? Again, I would require some context to that. And then from where is it picking errors during test execution? So errors, you're picking, it's not picking errors. I mean, we are defining the verification scenarios. So if you look into my studio workflows, we do have verify activities, as I said. So there are a bunch of activities that you can use and leverage for verifying a test case. You have one that verifies expression, one that verifies range, and also control attribute. So this is something very important, especially if you look at UI automation. So with this, I would be also able to do stuff like, let me drag and drop. So here I would be able to do stuff like get text from this particular screen and this particular label and verify whether that text is equal to this or not. So this is something that we have from which I am uh, generating the verifications, and this gives me the exact error messages during executions. How can we practice hands-on UiPath Studio and Test Manager? As I said, we do have that autopilot for testers page. So you can go ahead, try out all these. We have small videos. And if not, you can also visit academy.uipath.com, where you have, if you're starting new with UiPath, then you have a bunch of courses that you can go through. Especially for Test Suite, we have an entire curriculum that takes you through Test Manager, that takes you through Studio, how to configure Test Manager, how to create your test cases, and so on. So this is something that is already there in Academy that I can also show it to you. So these are some of the spots that you can bookmark so that you can get started with your testing journey with Test Suite. So let me find that and also copy the link and send it to you over chat. And it has a bunch of courses. So probably if you do not want to dive into automation, you can skip that. You can directly go into the test automation training, and it tells you exactly that. What is Test Suite? What are the components of Test Suite? What is Test Manager? How do you get started with testing in Studio? How do you do coded automation? And a lot more stuff. So this is very important. And I would say really a cool academic course in which you also get a bunch of hands-on practice while you're reading through the course as well. This is one recommendation I would have to all of you. So with that, I would say that is all from my side. And if you have any further questions, I would be happy to take them now.
Seems like there are no more questions. You are a champion. You went through all the questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So we are here anyway. You can find us very easily to ask your questions after the webinar as well. In the event page, you can open up a conversation there, a discussion, or you can find us on the forum. So we are very easy to be accessed. Well, in this case, thank you everybody for joining us today in this session, and a special thanks, of course, to Madhurima for sharing your expertise and walking us through the concepts and through the practices and insights and everything and the plans. And we hope to see you in any of our upcoming meetups. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
By
Bye.
the way,
Thank
may-
you.
Thank you.